Hi, I'm Lydia Lunning.
I'm Morgan McBride.
And I'm Michelle Olivier, and you're listening to Hey, I Want Your Job.
A look behind the curtain at amazing jobs and what it takes to get them.
Good morning and welcome to Hey, I Want Your Job. Today we are talking to Josh about how he came to be where he is, what he does, and what he looks for in recruiting people. Josh, you're a recruitment and HR wizard, so I'm going to just sit back and let you inform me on all the things that you know when we come to that. But let's start talking about you. So thanks for being with us today.
Yeah.
Tell me about you. What is your job title, first of all?
So I am a recruiter for mHealth Fairview. We are a healthcare system up in Minnesota. I do carry a little bit of different deals, so do some of the sourcing strategy work here at Fairview as well. But yeah, hiring for all different types of healthcare related professions.
So recruiter is sometimes a dirty word. We don't have the best rep. Let's be fair. Which is weird because we get people jobs and yet love to hate, I think. So tell me a little bit about what it is that you actually do, because recruiter also covers a whole lot of things. Some people, they work more on the inside. Some people, they are actually going out and finding and sourcing candidates, the elusive headhunters that people think are out there. So what is it that you actually do?
So I actually sit at my computer all day and try to find people that actually want to take jobs in the middle of a pandemic at a hospital in the middle of an Arctic tundra. So
you've got a line around the block.
Yeah.
Please come. Can I please have all the infection?
Bring me your professional masses. Join me.
Absolutely.
Come get yourself infected with a pandemic. Yeah, it's just great.
So while you're staring at your computer, where are you looking? Like, where do you go to find these people?
It's a great question. It's really going to depend on the role. So for me, unlike the 19 other people on my team, I have just this wide area of different roles that I recruit for. Some of the recruiters on my team only do nursing. Some of the recruiters only do imaging. For me, I'm doing primarily corporate and leadership. And then I'm going to do some one-off specialty positions, from there on out. So it really gets down to what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for a communications position, I don't have to do a damn thing, because what ends up happening is I open up a requisition and 400 candidates from every cotton picking college across the country applies. Because, I had a marketing degree and I can work in healthcare communications. Or I worked at a retail store and I can do healthcare communications. I really don't have to lift a finger on that role. Now, when I look for, let's say, a transplant coordinator, that's a little different.
Yeah, it's pretty specialist.
I need to look at, registered nurses with transplant or critical care experience, likely from another academic health organization or healthcare organization across the country. So then I'm going to be a little bit more targeted. I'm going to go and hit up some of the licensing groups across the country. I'm going to look at the transplant associations. And then I'm going to try to find somebody who has got a tie to Minnesota in some capacity. And I'm going to lure them away. It's usually opening up a line of what's new in your world.
Right.
Let them tell me where they are.
Have you considered the beauties of the land of a thousand lakes?
Exactly.
In June, we're beautiful.
It's not even 10,000 anymore. It's
exactly
12,300 and
growing.
22 human-made other lakes. I don't know.
There you go. So one of the questions that we had before is, I guess I have a couple. So first of all, you very specifically said academic institution. There are also for-profit medical groups. Is there as much of a gulf between those two that never the twain shall meet, or is there a preference for academic nonprofit hiring from that, but absolutely they'll consider the for-profit? Talk to me about that from a recruitment perspective.
When I look at certain specialties, I'm going to target academic health because it's more of the research base in that specialty beyond just the healthcare.
Okay.
So if I really want to find something that's really targeted towards what I'm looking for, that's where I'm going to start. And then I'll look anywhere else.
Okay.
You know, find transplant in non-academic health organizations. But if I know that there are resident fellows and research going on in this specialty, I'm really going to want to look for the academic side first, just so that way I can make that tie-in. A lot of people will that are in that space will want to stay in that space, and so that's where you can kind of lure them away. But really, it can open up from anywhere after that, you know. But I'm going to go really narrow first, and then I'm going to span out.
So if you're one of the people who is not in your preference space and they want to make it to the top of your list, what I'm hearing is they want to kind of focus on the research that they've been part of and the things that they've done to kind of close that informational gap. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, it's not only the informational, but it's also the environmental gap.
Okay.
Just the scope of practice is different in research-based academic health versus your regional healthcare,
Gotcha.
city, hospital. So if somebody really wants to get into that environment, what I would be doing is looking for those university connected healthcare systems, try to find a role in that and break into that area.
Okay. All right. So one of the questions that everybody always has for all of our guests is, how much do you make? We never ask you to actually answer the question, but how do you engage with that question when asked?
So for me, when I ask that question as the recruiter, I'm purely looking for context.
Okay, I would agree.
Unless you ask for $1 million and sharks with lasers on their heads, thank you, Dr. Evil. I'm not going to rule you out, because I understand that your knowledge, expertise, and experience has value. I want to know where you're wanting to be and maybe some context of where you've been salary-wise. So that way I can relate that story to the leaders as we're looking to move through the process.
But if somebody is asking you, Josh, and they're like, hey, I think that recruitment is the path for me, but I don't know if they make any money. What is your answer about your personal earnings?
Sure. I'm an open book. That doesn't bother me at all. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell them that, my role is in the, 80 to 100 range. And that's going to be based on years of experience and also scope of work.
Yeah.
Some recruiters, I don't have actually, if anybody looks at my LinkedIn profile, they're going to notice I haven't been a recruiter for 20 years. I was in the vendor space for 16 years. I only flipped to being a recruiter about 6-7 years ago. And so I don't have that anthology of experience, but I know what I make in comparison to other recruiters. And I'm a little bit higher in my market space as a corporate recruiter than a third party recruiter that's going to get paid on commissions and, turnover, that kind of stuff.
So on the subject of pay and recruitment, I have a very strong personal opinion on this, but I am interested to hear your professional opinion.
Sure.
Advertising salaries on job ads. What's your take? How do you recommend?
However, not every organization is in that same ballpark. I would love to be able to advertise our salaries on each one of our postings, but unfortunately, my organization in its current state is very conservative. They're not going to do that. And part of it is due to the competition in the marketplace. Our competition doesn't do it either. And so we're not going to be the first guy and say, hey, roll this out, and then not have others follow suit. It's just, maybe it's Minnesota, maybe it's the upper Midwest, I don't know. It is
not, trust me. I do have over 20 years of experience. And I have been arguing with my clients for the full 20 years that I personally get really frustrated as a recruiter that I advertise something that I know they're only going to pay 45. And I know that that's below market. And so I get great talent and they're all looking for 65. That's not a gap that we're going to close. Yeah. I would rather just advertise it at 45 and know that the people that I get that apply are actually going to be at the price point that I need. But organizations don't always listen. Nobody has made me queen of the world yet. So But that is something, I think it's a bit of a religious argument. Like I know other HR people who are like, absolutely not. And then we see like this ongoing trend right now with organizations that are advertising everybody's pay and like full transparency through the organization. I personally, again, I'm a radical. I am a big believer of that. I think that it shouldn't be a secret. And if you need to make it a secret, I have a question about why on that. But that's a personal, deeply held belief. So thanks for validating that I'm not the only crazy one out there.
You know, when it comes down to pay, if the organization has done their work the right way, equity should be balanced, and they should be able to explain and rationalize why somebody is at the pay that they're at, and be okay with it. Now, that means everybody's on the up and up. Yeah. We know that's not the case.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, when I do job offers, I actually talk my candidates through how I got to where we are. This isn't a used car deal where I'm sliding a piece of paper like we've seen in the movies. They open it up and say, oh, this is my offer? Great. No, I verbalize it through so they understand where I'm coming from. And then if they want to counter me, they can. Now, granted, only about 2% of the people that I offer to counter, because we've had that discussion so early on. We've been thorough through that.
It bothers me. I get so many people at all levels because I do a lot of executive coaching, and even they are like, oh, when is it okay to talk about money? And I know some recruiters get funny about it, but my gut is I want to have that conversation the very first time we ever talk. And no, I don't think that like it makes you look money hungry. I'm not asking you to do a volunteer gig. Like it's a job. So no, I completely agree. So you mentioned earlier that you don't have this lengthy career history in recruitment. So what made you join us on the dark side? How did you come to recruitment?
Well, I became a trusted advisor to HR. So I started in media. I was in newspapers and radio. And I ended up working for this company called Job Dig right out of Minneapolis. We did help wanted newspapers, radio, TV. We ended up branching out into social, added an applicant tracking system, and they then created this tool called LinkUp, which is still out in the marketplace. LinkUp is a job search engine solely based off of corporate career pages. So I was selling to non-buyers for nearly 10 years. I was selling to HR people. HR people don't buy a single damn thing.
If we can avoid it.
Like salespeople for whatever reason, even though both are people, I don't get it. And so when I left that organization in 2012, I went to work for my clients, teaching them what I was doing from the outside, but within their walls, giving control, cost, messaging, etc. And I fell into being a recruiter. A couple of clients brought me in to change some of their media, some of their recruitment strategy, and I started recruiting along with part of the work. And I found that I could live off the juice of finding great people for great careers as I did with chasing the commission checks. And I don't have the stress of it anymore, which is really, really cool. Now I get to find a hole in the organization that needs to be filled, find fantastic, great talent to fill it, and turn around patient care results because of the people that I find. That's huge.
I think that's one of the really nice things about working in your space is that with all of my clients, I'm like, I mean, nobody is going to die if you don't have the, do you know what I mean? Like we have that conversation. In your space, like you're actually like, oh, look, you got a new technical project manager. They're not going to cure cancer. They're not going to save someone's mom, but your people might cure cancer and they might save someone's mom. And I think from an emotionality perspective, I think that'd be really satisfying to kind of work in that space and be able to contribute something. So if you were not going to work in healthcare and you just like got a magic crayon and got to draw your own job, what's the dream? What's the industry? What's the sector? Where would you go?
Oh, that's easy. For me, that's really, really easy. I'd go and I'd be the HR guy for an NHL team itself.
Okay.
So I'm a hockey guy.
I was just saying, all your pictures are hockey. So I obviously knew, massive hockey fan. Okay. So NHL, if you're listening, Josh is available.
Yeah.
for a very reasonable rate.
Let's talk.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, all right. So what you are actively recruiting, you're struggling to get people, and yet the media and sort of conventional wisdom right now tells us there are no jobs, everybody is struggling. So that's kind of already one myth.
Yeah.
But what do you think is the single largest myth right now about where the market is and what the job search situation looks like?
Well, I mean, you kind of said it there just a second ago, that there aren't any jobs. My organization right now has about 1,700 openings.
Holy cow. Okay.
1,700.
Everybody move to Minnesota. Get a job.
I have lots of them. Are you an RN? Are you an imaging tech? Are you a nursing assistant? Are you a medical assistant? I have stuff for you. But the thing is the numbers aren't there. We've known about a national nursing shortage for quite some time. We've known about, the nursing assistants and medical assistants, that they're not funneling enough people into these programs to supply the demand that's out there. We've known that. We've actually created pipelines and programs to increase the size of those funnels for, different diverse groups, providing pathways to great careers. So we've done that work. We've laid that foundation, and now it's just bringing it in. But there are tons of it's not even just here in Minnesota. There are opportunities. People just need to open their eyes. What tends to happen in your job search, you're solely focused right here. You're not thinking about what's out here. Yeah. One thing that I tell people to do is when you are looking for a job and you apply to a position, let's say it's a window manufacturer. What you're going to do after that is you're going to look up online who are their greatest competitors, because 9 times out of 10, when the one company has an opening, their competitor has one too. But we don't think that way. What we do is we go to Indeed and we're like, sales, marketing, in my backyard, 10 miles from my home. We don't look at who the competitors are, what they're looking for, what they pay in comparison. We don't do that because God forbid we actually do work to try to find a freaking job.
I couldn't agree more. So a big part of one of the other things I do is I teach the LinkedIn and job searching classes that our group does. And that's exactly like what I teach them. Like, okay, so one of my clients is an expert on pool construction. Everybody's got a niche. Everybody's got a niche.
They do pool construction. I would wonder if they would do hockey rinks too. Just asking, because
I can float that.
Have to freeze.
She might have expertise, but so, and that was exactly what we said. I was like, she's like, well, there's only like 3 jobs. I was like, okay, that's all that's advertised. But if they're hiring, and so literally we went like old school through the phone book, and every single pool builder that was reputable area, she's contacting. She's like, oh my God, I have so many interviews. Well, yeah, because they have a need, and it's an intense enough need that they haven't even gotten around to advertising it. And I think that I think the other thing that I find, and tell me if this is, it sounds like kind of what you're saying. My favorite is I have like executives or highly skilled people come like, oh, everybody's looking for work. There's nothing. I'm like, wait a minute, just stop. COVID has not done anything to create an excess of qualified CFOs. That there is still the same number of people qualified for your job looking for work today that there were pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. Because in those highly skilled areas, most of the people who have been displaced by COVID, it's a whole range of sectors, but a lot of it is hospitality, a lot of it is food service, a lot of it is customer service, those types of work. And the highly skilled and senior level positions especially, like those aren't the ones that have been hit the hardest. And so you haven't really you're not against 14 million people for every single job out there. And I think for me, that's kind of one of my big takeaways in terms of what's different from what people think.
Well, the other one that you got to do when you're talking to, John Smith, CFO, that's worked for a company of 120 people, when he's looking at a CFO at an organization of 35,000 employees,
Yeah.
he's maybe a director or maybe a VP. Yeah. So check your ego at the door, my friend.
Yeah.
Size and scope of the work, not necessarily the title.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will say though that maybe I'm just lucky. Almost all of my executive clients actually have really pretty in-check egos, like even the ones that you would worry about. So like my colleagues are always like, oh my God, this CFO of an F500. I'm like, he's all right. Like, he's fine. And it is because, it's the whole wise enough to know I know nothing at all kind of situation. So yeah, I find that those guys usually have a pretty good grip on it.
I run it at all levels. I mean, when I'm looking for somebody and I, run into a, vice president of this specialty, and I really look into the organization and they've got maybe the amount of employees that I hired last week. My team hires 220 people a week. Size and scope is going to be different, and I know managing egos because I work with physicians.
You work in sales as well. So
the worst when it comes to egos. I mean, just because you can take somebody's heart out of their chest and put it into another one doesn't make you any different than the HR guy.
Yep. And it doesn't mean you're not a douche. So
we have care providers to help you with that, just saying.
So yeah, and that's a big part of what we tell people when we're helping with resumes is like you have to put numbers in because it creates that scale and it creates that scope. Giles, our guest last week, works at EY. They have 600,000 employees. Like he was saying, like, you think you know enterprise, you don't know enterprise. You worked with 30,000 people, good for you. Yeah. That's one half of one team out of come on.
Yep,
so
exactly.
Yeah, and so that's why all of those numbers are super important, I think, as a recruiter. So I know one of my big pet peeves on a resume is when I get it and I have no idea what you did. Like you gave me a piece of paper.
You mean after the objective? Because the objective is a pet peeve of mine.
Okay, I was going to say, because you're okay. So that's so interesting because last week's guest made a point of saying he really likes the objective. He wants to know what you want to be when you grow up, etc. I hate them. I think they're dumb. I'm like, your objective is to get the job you've just applied for because that's why it's on my desk. Is there anything that you wish you saw more of in resumes then?
I want to quantify your experience. Oh, by the way, before we pivot to that, was that Diet Coke in the McDonald's glass? Because there's nothing in McDonald's Diet Coke from what I hear.
Yeah, it's a full-fat Dr. Pepper. I'm in Texas, we drink Dr. Pepper.
See, all of my old boss, she would stop at McDonald's every day for a Diet Coke because there was nothing better than McDonald's fountain Diet Coke. I don't know. So something
not my
for your
experience.
audience on later, I guess.
There we go. We will ask.
All right, so back to the resume. What I really want is I want people to quantify that experience. Don't just give, I worked with this, I worked with that. Tell me more. Give me something, give me valuable information.
What is valuable information to you?
What's that?
Valuable information. Number of patients that they've seen? Do you want to know?
If it's patient acuity, if it's patient to staff ratios, if it's finance, I want to know the size and scope of budgets that you're working with or operational units that you're working with. I want to see that information just so that I can understand size and scope, like we talked about just a few minutes ago. If not, that's fine, because I'll ask about it later in an interview. But the more that you give me, the easier it is for you to float to the top. Because again, when I get 300 candidates, I'm not going to phone interview all 300. It ain't going to happen. I'm going to take 6 to 30 seconds to decide whether you're in or out. If your listeners as candidates find that harsh because they've spent days, weeks, months perfecting their resume, too freaking bad. I'm sorry. I only have so much time in the day to go through resumes when I still have to book interviews, conduct phone interviews, make job offers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to decide in that short period of time the future of your career. Get over yourself. That's just how this works. So Give me the goods. Give me enough meat to make sure that you make it through. When I look at your resume, and this is my perspective, so use it as you will, but your resume reads like a funnel. If I never get past the top, I'm never going to get to the bottom. It's like a news editor. And I started in newspapers the way that they start.
Above the fold. Yeah.
I need to get enough meat out of the top to make a decision whether you're in or out, because if I don't read the rest, it's gone anyway. Who cares?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We say that, the above the fold bit, that the 10-second impression, that is where you live or die with the recruiter. Yep. And that the rest of your resume is for a hiring manager, because the hiring manager will sit and pore over every semicolon. And, I have had hiring managers come and say, 20 years ago, he did a job that I find suspect. I'm like, why do you care? Why does anybody care? But so absolutely, hiring managers are a totally different thing. It's everything below the 10-second impression. In my book is all for the hiring manager. And if you don't have the good, they're never going to know, and nobody's ever going to read it.
Exactly. So it's the same thing like with a cover letter. Go ahead and send and attach a cover letter. But guess what? Recruiter guy ain't going to read it. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, no, cover letters are one of those religious arguments in recruitment, as I'm sure you know. I think that they are stupid and pointless. I've never known anybody to get a job, not get a job based on a cover letter. I tell my clients that if you're going to send a cover letter, that is the body of your email. Like, I may glance at what your email says, that's fair, but I am not going to open a second attachment.
Agreed.
Nor am I going to send it to the hiring manager, because I don't want them to be distracted. I just want them to look at the resume that I sent them and tell me what I need to know. Exactly. So, absolutely. Well, any last parting thoughts or words of wisdom for folks other than all RNs, please move to Minnesota immediately and contact Josh?
We're still in the middle of a pandemic. I still have lots of openings, both COVID and non-COVID related. So if you want to come on to Minnesota, we'll bring you. We'll figure out a way to make it happen. No, really for other additional job seeking advice, one thing that you and I talked about when we first connected was hashtag job hunt chat. Yep. Every Monday night, my friends and I run a job advice chat over on Twitter. It's at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific. Yes, I get it all straight. But jump over onto Twitter, and what we have is we've got great questions, really simple stuff to make you think about how to change your search, connect with recruiters, connect with HR professionals, connect with corporate leaders, and reframe how you may be doing things. Because what really happens in a job search is we get into, I'm going to do this. This is what my resume is going to look like.
Yeah.
And when we stumble and we don't change it, nothing changes in the results. So we talk about salary negotiations. We talk about resumes. We talk about cover letters. We talk about interviews. We cover all of those different topics. Candidates will send us questions and we'll throw it at the group. We've been doing it every Monday night for over 10 years.
And I was checking it out this Monday, and really smart answers, smart questions. So absolutely, everybody should definitely go and check that out as well as a fantastic resource. So thank you so much for your time and for the chat and for all of the additional information. You've been fabulous. And if anybody needs any extra services or any questions, feel free to reach out to us at ONH, or we'll have all of Josh's contact details if you are looking to move to the Arctic North. Thanks again. You've been listening to Hey, I Want Your Job.
For more on how you can get your own awesome job, visit ONH Consulting at www.onhconsulting.com. We offer incredible resumes, no-nonsense career advice, and real-world tips for landing a job in today's market. Check us out on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for more insider info. Soon you'll be hearing us say,
I'm Morgan McBride, and I want your job.
And I'm Lydia Lunning, and I want your job.
And I'm Michelle Olivier, and hey, I want your job.